The name at the bottom of the stack made Sandra Merritt stop. She had been moving through the applications quickly, 12 of them, all for the overnight maintenance position, all more or less the same. A form, a work history, a reference or two. She had been doing this for 11 years and she could tell within 30 seconds whether someone was worth a second read. She read this one 3 times. The name was Gregory Holt. The address was an apartment building on Regent Street in Sudbury. The work history listed 4 years at a mining equipment firm in Timmins, 2 years at a logistics company in Sault Ste. Marie, and the last 14 months at a groceries distribution warehouse on the edge of town. The application was for a building maintenance worker position, night shift, 40 hours a week, $14.50 an hour. Sandra set the folder down. She picked it up again. She walked down the hall to the office of the VP of Operations, knocked once and opened the door without waiting. "I need you to look at something," she said. Gregory Holt arrived at the interview wearing a gray Henley and work boots that had been cleaned but not recently. He was somewhere in his mid-50s, with the kind of hands that told you he had spent most of his life using them. He sat down across from Sandra and folded those hands on the table and looked at her with an expression that was entirely neutral. Not nervous, not eager, not performing calm, just quiet. Sandra had interviewed a lot of people. She had learned that you could read almost everything you needed to know in the first 90 seconds. What she read in Gregory Holt was harder to name. There was no slump in his shoulders, no tension in his jaw. He looked at her the way someone looks at a window, present, attentive, not invested in impressing the glass. "Thank you for coming in," she said. "Thank you for having me," he said. His voice was even, not warm, not flat, even. She asked him the standard questions. He answered them without elaboration. Why the position, what his availability was, whether he had experience with industrial cleaning equipment, whether he was comfortable working alone overnight. He said yes to the equipment question without explaining further. She made a note. Then she asked the question she had been holding back since she walked into the room. "You have a background in structural engineering." It wasn't a question. She had already confirmed it. Gregory looked at her for a moment. "I do," he said. "You worked with Pemberton Corps for 8 years." "Yes, and before that you completed a graduate fellowship at Waterloo." He didn't answer right away. He looked at the table, then back at her. "That's right." "So," Sandra said, "why this position?" Gregory was quiet for long enough that she thought he might not answer. Then he said, "My daughter needs stability. She's 8. Her mother and I separated 2 years ago. I have her full-time now, and I need a schedule that doesn't change, a commute that doesn't eat the day, and a job that ends when it ends and doesn't follow me home." He paused. "This position is nights. She'd be asleep. My neighbor watches her. I'd be home before she wakes up." Sandra looked at him. "You were a licensed structural engineer." "I was," he said. "I still am, technically. And you're applying to mop floors." Something moved in his face. Not quite a smile. Not quite the opposite. "I'm applying to do a job that lets me be a father," he said. "The floor mopping is part of the job." Sandra looked down at her notes. She didn't write anything. After a moment she said, "I'll be in touch by Thursday." Gregory stood, shook her hand and left. Sandra sat in the empty room for a while after he was gone. He was hired. He started the following Monday. The building was a mid-sized commercial complex on the north end of Sudbury. 4 floors, a mix of tech firms and consulting offices, and 1 large open concept floor leased to a regional engineering firm called Arcturus Solutions. Gregory came in at 11, worked until 7, and was gone before most of the tenants arrived. The other maintenance workers were a rotating cast of 3. There was a young man named Tyler who talked constantly and worked sporadically. There was a woman named Bev who had been there for 9 years and moved through the building like she owned it, which in some ways she did. And there was a part-timer named Remy who came in on Wednesdays and Fridays and never said much to anyone. Gregory fit into none of these categories. He learned the building quickly, quicker than Tyler had in his first 6 months, quicker than Bev expected. He didn't ask unnecessary questions. He noticed things. A seal around a 3rd-floor window that needed replacing before winter. A load-bearing column in the parking structure whose surface showed early cracking that could deepen with the freeze-thaw cycle. He mentioned these to Bev in passing and didn't mention them again. Bev mentioned them to the building manager. The building manager mentioned them to the property management company. The property management company sent someone to look. The someone confirmed both issues and flagged them as priority. Later, the building manager came back downstairs and asked Bev how she had caught them. "I didn't," Bev said. "The new guy did." "Which new guy?" "Gregory, overnight." The building manager looked at the repair estimates sitting on his desk. "How long has he been here?" 3 weeks, Bev said. On the 4th floor, the Arcturus Solutions office occupied the entire east wing. It was a firm of about 60 people, structural and civil engineers, project managers, 2 geotechnical specialists on contract. The managing director was a woman named Nora Ashby. She had started the company 11 years ago with a partner who had since retired, and she had grown it from a regional firm to one with 3 offices and a reputation that reached into federal infrastructure contracts. Nora arrived every morning at 7:15 and left, on good days, at 6:30. She had a particular way of moving through the office, efficiently, with a small notebook always in her left hand. Her team had learned to read the notebook. If it was open, she was working. If it was closed, it was time to talk. She had a habit of staying late on the last Thursday of each month to review the project files before they went to the client. It meant she was sometimes still in the office when Gregory came in at 11. She had noticed him twice. Once through the glass partition when he was running the floor buffer down the corridor, and once when she came out of the kitchen with a coffee and nearly ran into him in the hallway. "Sorry," he said, stepping aside. "My fault," she said. She had been looking at her phone. She went back to her desk and didn't think about it again. In November, a problem arrived. It came in the form of a project file, a highway overpass rehabilitation in northern Ontario, a contract Arcturus had won in the spring. The job was supposed to be straightforward. Remove the deteriorated deck sections, replace the bearing assemblies, resurface, and done. But the site report from that week had flagged something in the substructure, a load differential in the central pier that didn't match the original drawings. The contractor had paused work and was waiting on direction. Nora had 2 engineers working the file. One of them had calculated a correction and was confident. The other was not. The calculation involved a dynamic load model for freeze-thaw stress cycles over a 70-year projected lifespan, not a trivial analysis. The disagreement between the two had been going on for 4 days and was starting to affect the project's schedule. On the Friday evening of the 3rd week in November, Nora spread the drawings across the large work table in the open area of the office and stood in front of them alone. Her 2 engineers had gone home. She had their calculations in 2 folders, one on each side, and neither of them was exactly wrong, but they arrived at different conclusions, and she needed to know which one to file. She was still there at 11:15 when Gregory came through with his cart. He slowed when he saw the drawings. He didn't stop. He continued to the far end of the office, emptied the recycling bins near the window, and started back. But he slowed again when he passed the table. Nora looked up. "Sorry," he said. "I'll come back." "You're fine," she said. "I'm just thinking." Gregory nodded and moved to start on the floor near the kitchen. He worked quietly. Nora turned back to the drawings. After a few minutes, she straightened and said, mostly to herself, "The model doesn't account for the bedrock depth variance." Gregory stopped. He didn't say anything right away. He stood with the mop handle in his hands and looked at the far wall. Then he said quietly, "Is it a Precambrian shield site?" Nora turned around. He was looking at her with the same neutral expression she had seen on him before. Not embarrassed, not trying to impress her, just present. "Yes," she said. "The standard freeze-thaw model undershoots on shield sites," he said. "The thermal conductivity of the rock is different. The stress cycle frequency compounds over time instead of averaging out." Nora looked at him for a long moment. "How do you know that?" He set the mop against the cart. "I worked the Matagami River overpass rehabilitation about 12 years ago. We had the same problem. We had to build a site-specific thermal correction factor into the load model." Nora walked to the table. She pulled one of the folders open and looked at the calculation inside. "Which factor?" "Depends on the bedrock profile at the pier base," Gregory said. "If you have the site boring report, I can tell you." She found the boring report in the 2nd folder. She slid it across the table. He looked at it for under a minute, not scanning, reading. Then he looked at the load calculation. "This one is closer," he said, touching one of the folders. "But the correction coefficient is too conservative. It'll hold, but it'll create an unnecessary budget overrun on the bearing replacement schedule." Nora studied his face. Who are you? Gregory Holt, he said. I do the overnight maintenance. I know who you are in the building, she said. I mean, who are you? He was quiet for a moment. I was a structural engineer, he said. Licensed in Ontario. I worked on bridge rehabilitation and industrial structure assessment for about 16 years. I'm not practicing right now. Why not? I have a daughter, he said. She needs me present. Nora looked down at the drawings, then back at him. The Matagami overpass, she said. That was a federal contract. Tricontinental Engineering handled that file. I know, Gregory said. I led the substructure team. Nora said nothing for a long moment. Do you want to sit down? She said finally. He looked at his cart, at the floors he hadn't finished. The floors will keep, she said. They sat at the table for 2 hours. Gregory walked her through the correction methodology from the Matagami file, working from memory and from the drawings in front of them, adapting as he went. He wrote numbers on the back of a blank sheet from the recycling tray. His handwriting was precise and unhurried. He didn't use a calculator, not because he was showing off, but because he apparently didn't need one for this level of calculation. At one point, one of the junior engineers from the team, a young man named Calvin who had stayed late to finish a different file and had been working quietly in the corner with headphones in, pulled his headphones out and looked at the whiteboard where Gregory had moved the calculation. What the hell is that? Calvin said. Nora looked at him. Who wrote that? Calvin said, pointing at the board. He wasn't being rude. He was genuinely confused. Where did that come from? Gregory, Nora said. Calvin looked at Gregory, then at the board, then back at Gregory, who was standing with a marker in his hand and the expression of someone who had just realized he'd wandered into a conversation he hadn't planned for. You're the maintenance guy, Calvin said. Yes, Gregory said. Calvin looked at the board again. He was in his late 20s, an engineer 3 years out of school, and he was looking at the calculation the way you look at something when you know exactly what it is and also know it would have taken you 2 days to produce it. Yeah, Calvin said. That's right. That's actually exactly right. He put his headphones back in, then immediately took them back out. Do you want a job? He said. Gregory looked at Nora. Nora said, Calvin, sorry, Calvin said, sorry. But yeah, the winter moved through Sudbury the way it always did, decisively without apology. The streets narrowed with plowed banks. The sky sat low and gray for weeks at a time. Gregory drove his daughter Lily to school in the mornings and picked her up from his neighbor Margaret's at 7:30. And Lily would be in her pajamas already, hair brushed, backpack by the door for the next day. She was 8 and intensely organized and took her routine seriously. She did not like changes to the schedule. Gregory had not told her what had happened at the office. He hadn't told her about the drawings or the calculation or the 2 hours at the table or the conversation he and Nora had had afterward, which had been careful and direct, and had not resolved into anything formal, but had left both of them with something to think about. What he had told her was that his boss at work had a hard problem and he had helped with it. Lily had asked if his boss was nice. He said he thought so. She had asked if he was going to get in trouble for doing extra work, because their teacher said that sometimes when you do extra work, it makes other people feel bad. He said he didn't think so. She seemed to find this acceptable and went back to her coloring. He thought about the drawing table, about the way the calculation had come back to him easily, not like remembering something, but like turning on a light in a room that had always been there. He had not turned that light on in almost 2 years. He had not let himself miss it. Missing things was a luxury that the first year of full custody had not extended to him. There was too much to manage, too much to learn about being present in a way he had not been during the years when the work had come first. He had been good at the work. He had been less good at the other things. He was trying to be better. The floor puffer in the second floor corridor had a vibration issue he had flagged twice to the building manager, without result. He fixed it himself one Tuesday night with a wrench he had brought from home. He did not mention it afterward. In January, Nora called him into the office on a Thursday evening before his shift started. She offered him a coffee. He accepted. She had the project file on the table, closed now, filed, and a second folder beside it that he didn't recognize. The Matagami correction worked, she said. We filed the revised calculation on Monday. The contractor resumed work yesterday. Good, Gregory said. Calvin went and pulled the original Matagami bridge file, Nora said. The substructure methodology you used then is cited in 2 federal bridge rehabilitation guidelines issued after 2016. Gregory held his coffee with both hands. You're cited, Nora said. By name. In the federal reference documents. I know, he said. You didn't mention that. You didn't ask. Nora looked at him for a moment. I want to offer you a consulting arrangement, she said. Project specific. When we have a file that has a substructure or rehabilitation complexity I think you'd be useful on, I'd bring you in hourly. You set the availability. Gregory was quiet. You keep your maintenance position if you want it, she said. I'm not trying to complicate your schedule. I'm trying to use a resource I found entirely by accident because you noticed a bedrock variance in a load model at 11:30 at night. It wasn't that late, he said. It was 11:47, she said. I checked the security log. Something crossed his face, that same almost not quite a smile. I'd want approval rights on anything I sign, he said. I won't put my name on work I haven't fully reviewed. Of course, Nora said, and I can't be available during school hours or pickup. 7:15 to 8:30 in the morning and 3 to 4 in the afternoon are off limits. Understood. And I want it in writing that the consulting work doesn't affect my standing maintenance position. I'm not leaving that job. Nora looked at him. You want to keep the maintenance job? Yes, even if the consulting is. Yes, he said. Lily is used to my schedule. So is Margaret. I don't want to change what's working. Nora nodded slowly. She wrote something in her notebook. Then she closed. Can I ask you something? She said. Yes, when you walked away from engineering, was it hard? Gregory considered this. He looked at the window where the January dark had settled against the glass. The first month was hard, he said. After that, no. After that, it was just what I had to do. He paused. The hard part was different from what I expected. I thought I'd miss the work. But what I actually missed was... He stopped. What? Nora said, being useful, he said, in a specific way. Not just functional, useful in a way that only you can be. He was quiet for a moment. That night with the drawings, he said, that was the first time in 2 years I had felt like that. Nora didn't say anything. She looked at the folder on the table. I'll have the consulting agreement drafted by next week, she said. Look it over and tell me if anything needs to change. Gregory stood. He picked up his coffee cup and walked it to the kitchen. He came back, collected his jacket from the chair. Thank you, he said. You helped me avoid a significant structural error on a public infrastructure project, Nora said. I'm the one who should be thanking you. Still, he said. He went downstairs to start his shift. The consulting arrangement became, over the following months, a quiet and functional thing. Nora sent him files on Tuesday evenings. He reviewed them in the hours after Lily was asleep, made notes in the margins, returned them before her day started. Twice she brought him into the office on a Saturday morning. She had confirmed in advance with Margaret to walk the team through a methodology. He wore the same gray Henley both times. The team, after a period of adjustment, had come to accept the arrangement with varying degrees of comprehension. Calvin had accepted it fastest and most completely. A senior engineer named Paul, who had been with Arcturus for 7 years and was accustomed to being the technical authority in the room, had taken longer. But Paul was ultimately a fair person, and after Gregory caught an error in a pre-stressed concrete calculation that would have caused a significant delay on a transit authority project, Paul had come around without making a production of it. There was a Thursday afternoon when Lily had a half day, and Gregory brought her to the building to pick up a file Nora had left for him at the front desk. Lily stood in the lobby in her winter coat with her backpack and looked at the building with a seriousness she applied to all new environments. Is this where you work? She said. It is, Gregory said. The whole building? Just the floors, he said. Lily considered this. And the other part, she said. The math part? He had told her some of it, not in professional terms, but the shape of it. That he helped sometimes with complicated problems. That there were people at his work who asked him questions. The 4th floor, he said. She looked at the elevator. Can I see? He thought about it. He texted Nora. She texted back a single word, obviously. They went up. Nora was in the office, a Saturday, which should not have surprised him but did. She came to the door when she heard them and crouched slightly to Lily's level without making a performance of it. You must be Lily, she said. Lily assessed her the way she assessed everything. You're the one who sends my dad math, she said. I am, Nora said. He does it after I'm asleep, Lily said. I've seen the papers on the table in the morning. Is that okay? Nora said. Lily thought about this seriously. He likes it, she said. He looks different when he's working on it. He looks like when he's helping me with my homework, except more. Nora looked at Gregory over Lily's head. Gregory looked at the floor. Well, Nora said, I'm glad he's helping. He's very good at it. Lily nodded as if this confirmed something she had already known. I know, she said. He helped me with a pattern problem last week, and he explained it 3 different ways until I got it. My teacher only knows one way. Nora smiled. That sounds like him. Spring came to Sudbury with its particular combination of mud and optimism. The snow left the parking lot in stages. Gregory replaced the window seal on the 3rd floor. The work order had finally come through, 4 months after he had flagged it. He did the job without comment. Bev watched him work for a while and then went back to her own section. On the last day of April, Gregory came up from the storage room to find Nora standing in the lobby. She was not carrying her notebook, which was unusual. She was wearing her coat, which meant she was leaving or had just arrived, and it was 4:15 in the afternoon, which meant she was leaving early, which was also unusual. I have a proposal, she said. Okay, he said. Not the consulting arrangement. Something different. She looked at him steadily. I want to bring you on as a staff engineer. Part-time to start, whatever schedule works around Lily. The hours would be mornings, mostly, with some flexibility. I've already spoken to HR about structuring the arrangement so it doesn't conflict with your. I heard you the first time, he said. She stopped. Sorry, he said. I meant I understood. What's your answer? He stood with the seal installation tool in his hand. He looked up the stairwell. The building was quiet at this hour, the offices overhead still warm with late afternoon work. Can I have a week, he said. Of course, Nora said. He took 4 days. He talked to Margaret, who told him that her schedule was flexible, and she would be glad to cover any gaps, and also that he should stop acting like asking for help was a burden on people. He talked to Lily, who asked if it meant he would still be home in the mornings and present at pickup and available for homework, and when he said yes to all 3, she asked what was the problem then. He thought about that for a long time. He called Nora on the 4th morning. Yes, he said. Good, she said. There was a brief pause. Your signing bonus will reflect the Matagami correction, she said. I asked our accountant to quantify what catching that error saved us in schedule overruns and contract exposure. That's not necessary, Gregory said. It's not for you, she said. It's on record what you contributed before you were officially contributing. I want the paperwork to tell the right story. He didn't answer right away. Outside the kitchen window, Lily was eating her cereal and looking at something in her school agenda with the focused expression that meant she had identified a problem she intended to solve. Okay, he said. I'll have the offer letter ready Thursday, Nora said. You can review it at 11:47 if that works for you. He almost laughed. It was close enough to a laugh that Lily looked up from her agenda and gave him the slightly suspicious look she reserved for situations she didn't fully understand. Thursday is fine, he said. In the maintenance room in the basement of the building, on the shelf above the utility sink, Gregory kept a spare set of work gloves in a paper bag. He had brought them from the warehouse job in his last week there. They were worn at the thumb and first finger from repetitive grip work, faded along the palm from cleaning solution exposure. They were not useful gloves anymore. He had better ones in the cart upstairs. He had kept them because he didn't believe in being ashamed of where you'd been. Lily had asked about them once, early on, when she'd come to drop off his lunch and had seen them on the shelf. Why do you keep those? She'd said. They're too worn out. Because they remind me of something, he said. What? He thought about it. That you can do a hard thing for a good reason and it doesn't make you less of who you are, he said. It just adds to it. Lily had looked at the gloves for a moment. Then she'd said, like how I still have my old multiplication chart even though I know all the answers now. Exactly like that, he said. The gloves stayed on the shelf.